Right, welcome back. It's the 2025-26 Premier League football season. But more importantly than that, it's the fifth season of Fulham Fix. I can't believe it's five.
Yeah, 5 seasons. It's. I mean, I suppose we've cheated in the fact we've done kind of 2 seasons a football season.
Right.
That's kind of helped us. So, I suppose we're only I don't know, like two and a bit years into this. But yeah, it's crazy that we're on to sort of season 5 of the fix, man. It's flown by, hasn't it?
It has flown by, and the off season's also flown by,
Yep.
in which the positives really for us all, let's just quickly get into it, Fulham squad wise, is that we've kept everyone, or it feels like we have. I know there's going to be a period of time when the season starts where things can change, but there was some anxiety, not anxiety that we voiced officially, but there was anxiety about, was Marco going to stay or leave?
Yep.
So Kenny Tete's had a thing, hasn't he? Anthony Robinson, Tom Cairney, obviously was a big one with the last game where we weren't sure whether he was going to be he was literally waving goodbye or not. It turned out he wasn't even sure.
No.
But it turns out with all those names, we've retained that squad that we fall in love with so much. So that's the first really positive thing, is we're finding the Fulham squad as we left them.
Absolutely. And I think that was really key because clearly it's a strong unit. Clearly they perform so well together. The fact that, every season in the Premier League, we've built upon the last season, losing a key player here and there, like massive players like Mitrovic and Palhinha, but still growing every season, still bettering ourselves every season. So it's so important to have kept that core and players like Kenny Tete, and Tom Cairney. They're a big part of that. And obviously Marco Silva, the fact he's still in charge, still steering the ship, and
Yeah,
it's going to be really exciting. And then obviously getting the kids committed to God, that sounds like makes me sound like the oldest man in the world, getting the kids committing to professional contracts. But like, the fact that you know we've got players like Josh King and Luke the Fusarol who've committed to the club, because that's been hard in the past to get them from that
yeah.
into that kind of professional contract, into that first team contract. And that's just fantastic news, because I think we've got some exciting times ahead, especially with players like Josh King.
Well, yeah, and I don't know whether I read too much into this, but I sort of like to believe in collective vision, and we've all had that shared thing with this pretty much the same personnel over the last few years, where they've done so well. They've been close to being the best
Yeah.
modern football Fulham team or team ever, but we've had those sort of heartbreaks as well. So the same way that we avenged what happened at Old Trafford in the FA Cup last season, winning it on the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Sorry, not quarterfinals. Last year, winning in the fifth round, the FA Cup, at Old Trafford. It just feels like there's some storylines waiting to, and the main one really is a trophy. Like
Yeah.
I feel like Marco will be desperate to do something really special and lasting at this club, and that will probably be, what is that? A League Cup, an FA Cup, or a sort of
Yeah.
top seven, top six finish. Those are the things that we're going to be eyeing really this season.
Yeah.
So
Without a doubt. No, no, I think you're totally right. And even I was lucky enough to chat to Tom Cairney yesterday, and chatting to him about, he's so excited to be at the club for another year. I mean, that's obvious. He loves the club, and his personal goal, like the one thing he would dearly love, is possibly that trophy. Getting your hands on one of the cup trophies, and as he said, we've been so close
yeah.
every time, and it feels like we are with that close to achieving that.
And it's
So
testament to how far we've come as a club that we're even talking about that with the same set of players and star
yeah,
players that have stayed at Fulham,
totally,
because they
totally.
believe in that as well. So
Yeah.
let's see, Ivan, when we're in season six of Fulham Fix, the end of this real football season, we'll see if this manifestation has come true. But
What, absolutely. Well, I'm just thinking, like, maybe in another couple of years' times, when you're back on the main stage at Glastonbury, you'll have like the FA Cup on top of your
oh,
speaker.
thank you for bringing that up. I can't believe we haven't mentioned that first thing in the show.
Have you given it back, the Intertoto? That's what I want to know.
In the off season, yeah, just quickly for anyone else that doesn't know what Ivan's talking about there. The Maccabees got back together, my band, and we're playing some shows this summer, which has been a really great time, really emotional, really adrenaline fueled. We played Glastonbury headline in the Park stage.
It's awesome.
Jeff and James, who are on the call in the background here, said to me, I asked last minute, do you think there's anything Fulham related I can get on the, like, on the amp or something just to represent the Fix and Fulham? James was like, I think we could probably get you into Toto Cup, mate. So I was like, I thought that can't be real. Like that's got to be, that's a special piece of like actual gold in the Fulham cabinet, trophy
Yeah.
cabinet.
Yeah.
The morning of Glastonbury, Jeff takes it out of a trophy cabinet, puts it in a car, takes it to Glastonbury, accidentally bumps into a few Fulham fans who are walking around Glastonbury in Fulham shirts. They think they're hallucinating because they've been at Glastonbury 3 days, but he's presenting them with the Intertoto Cup and they're getting photos with him. And then
So cool.
we played a show and I've got on the back of my hand the Intertoto. We won it one time. I made sure it's right behind me.
Yeah.
So on all that BBC footage of the Maccabi Glastonbury set, you can see the Intertoto Cup. And more beautifully than that, because I didn't mention it anywhere else, there were lots of Fulham fans just watching randomly,
Yeah.
just thinking, squinting at the television, being like, and getting on social media, being saying, "Is that the real Intertoto Cup?" And I can tell you now, validate for truth, that was the real Intertoto Cup.
Yeah.
Pleasure being on my amp, and the only thing I forgot to do was lift it in the air like Rufus Brevitt.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I've got to say, like, I didn't know officially if it made its way to Glasgow, if it got there in the end. I just heard that there was a chance it sounded like it was happening. And then, watching you guys on the telly peak time, and within one or two songs, I was like, there, that meme from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That meme, that was me literally going. I was so happy. I was so happy. Anyway,
I've got to say credit to Jeff because that thing is heavy.
best.
And he took it because I didn't feel safe taking that for any length of time, because if I was responsible for losing the Intertoto Cup, I don't know how I'd live with myself. So Jeff has
Yeah.
taken it to Glastonbury in a bag like something out of Indiana Jones, and it's quite heavy.
Yeah.
So fair play to Jeff.
There's a story there. Like we'll need to ask Jeff at some point. Was he searched on the way in? Did any security go, what's this? This looks like a blunt weapon. And you're like, no, that's the Intertoto Cup. Give it respect. It's coming for a day trip to Glastonbury. Come on.
Maybe in a little gap this season when we haven't got a player, we'll get Jeff on to talk about the journey Intertoto Cup made that day.
Intertoto journey
To Glastonbury and back. Anyway, who's on this week, Ivan? First,
I mean, you've got to start with someone big, someone iconic. He's not an ex-player, not someone's played for the club, but he's someone that is so closely linked to some of the greatest moments in this club history. It's the wonderful commentator Peter Drury, who is probably got he probably has said some of the most spine-tingling words that any Fulham fan can hear, and we got him on and talked about his life and his relationship with Fulham and his relationship with that wonderful night when we made it to the final, and I mean, he really was also possibly one of the nicest guys I think I've ever met, one of the most humble, down-to-earth guys, right?
yeah, look, the thing I've really loved about doing, as well as meeting all of Fulham heroes, is people outside of Fulham Football Club who've got an affection for and an understanding of Fulham Football Club, and he really does. And so we talk a lot about Fulham and his history with Fulham. But he obviously, like in his beautiful language, sort of humble but very poetic language, puts into terms a lot of like the ways that commentaries work for him and how he commentates. And so, just from an outside perspective, for someone who's become really is the voice of football now, Martin Tyler in the past, and now it's Peter Drury. Just hearing him speak about his profession, his discipline, was a total joy and privilege.
Yeah.
We should leave you with him, shouldn't we?
I think so. I mean, it was lovely. I think I could have spoken to him for hours, and yeah, we'd a handover. Just enjoy this. This is a great start to a new season of the Fix.
My 7-year-old nephew has just started to fall in love with Fulham because I've been pushing on him, to be honest with you. But we were watching your Hamburg commentary, which we'll get to in a second, of that game, but also old clips because he's just interested in Fulham.
And he actually said a very perceptive thing, which like really like pierces the heart of it. He was watching the costume and he said, it looks exactly the same.
Well, I think that counts for a lot.
And I think there was something in that you can, and it's something that you capture so beautifully in your iconic Fulham moments that you can, I'm getting goosebumps now, you can feel the history of Fulham Football Club just by being there and looking at it.
Yeah.
You can see Johnny Haynes, you can see Berbatov stopping the ball, you can see the team in the 4th division. It's all sort of implied, like it's almost sketched in there. So that feeling of that you're watching another step of a history is even apparent to a 7-year-old, if that makes
I think
sense.
that's true. And that is not just part of the character of the club. That is, let's face it, you mentioned Johnny Haynes, that is part of the architecture of the club.
Right.
That is what you see.
Yeah.
And actually, funny enough, even bringing it right up into the advancing years of the 21st century, we still televise out of this new stand. So
Right.
what the viewer sees still on the telly
Yeah.
is the cottage
Exactly.
and the Johnny Haynes stand. Yeah. So yeah, when you get the reverse angle, you get a glimpse of this glittering new building. But actually, the broad perception
Yeah.
remains of a dear old one-tier wooden stand.
Exactly.
And there's something
And that
sweet about that.
and that suits you as a commentator, doesn't it? That really
It
fits
does me
your
because I'm an
style.
old romantic.
Well, exactly,
Yes,
because you're lyrical, you know, the way you speak, it really fits the cottage in a way that's...
Well, it enables a narrative. Yeah,
Right.
That's what it does, and that's why when something special happens here, there's a backdrop. You know, there's a backdrop that makes it special, and. You know, in case anybody's watching this, I would reiterate, I'm no Fulham fan. I have no affiliation.
Let's make that very clear.
Did we get him the discount? You wanted two home kits. That's fine. We'll sort that. Yeah.
It's and you'll probably hate this, but you know, when something special happens that's fresh, you know, so a very, very different club to yours. Newcastle won the League Cup this year. And when I went to work on that game, Newcastle against Liverpool, I'm just as ready for Liverpool to win. And I have no partisanship, don't care, really don't care who wins. But when Newcastle win, it's clearly a fresh narrative because they haven't won forever.
Yeah.
And in fairness, and I know this is a sore point for you, the same was true. I didn't work on it. The same was true when Crystal Palace wins the FA Cup.
Yeah.
Now, you know, as a Fulham fan, you're probably throwing...
No. Do you know what? I
Street,
think most people were rooting for Palace.
No, I
You know what I
absolutely
mean?
was not rooting for Palace.
Oh, now do I look bad?
But
Do I look terrible?
Still hurt.
Well, I think there's something again. You want that team
No, I'm
that's
joking.
never done it before.
yeah, it's just
you know,
it's a lovely thing. But yeah, that you're right. The backdrop does it just creates a scene and a scenery. And actually, again, talking of working out of this stand and looking at that stand, the view is absolute. And so it's quite easy to get lyrical about that. You know, it's about the best view of London there is.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's worth coming for those who want to splash out on one of the posh tickets.
Yeah.
Come during the day
Yeah.
and have a look at, you know, come in August and see the heat haze and the
London, yeah.
buildings, and then come at night and see it all lit up.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. And oddly enough, your mate Jimmy Anderson, I love going to Burnley because the view out of their stand over the Lancashire hills is a beautiful thing as well. And actually for cricket lovers like you and I, the Burnley Cricket Club's there. So when the football's dull, sometimes there's a Sunday afternoon game going on.
You're
But
looking over your shoulder.
So Burnley, I find a really evocative place to work in a kind of northern rural way.
It really is.
And Fulham in a very urban capital city way is a beautiful place to work as well.
Not to go too off piece, but the thing about Burnley, like, is it's almost Burnley itself is dug in like a crater.
Yes.
So it almost feels like it's like a village in The Simpsons or something to me, where it's like all the activity is dug into.
Yes.
The
Yeah,
valley
yeah.
kind of thing where you see all the activity.
Yeah.
But quickly, just to sort of, you're talking about stories and stuff, just get a sense of you when you're seeing Fulham be beaten 6-0 by Port Vale in 1987. What is your, are you a commentator, a budding commentator at that time?
No,
Did you want to be a commentator?
Not at all.
What are your dreams and
No,
ambitions?
I'm a football geek. I'm a student who is on, presumably in March, Easter holiday from Hull University.
Right.
And although I'm not a fan of them, I used to watch quite a lot of Hull City in those days.
Yeah.
Brian Horton's Black and Amber Army.
Wow. Brian.
And so those were happy days. And honestly, because I didn't start going to football until really I was a student, because I wasn't in a family that took me to football.
Right.
I was collecting grounds. Nothing more nor less than that.
Games.
I used to love going to games.
Right.
Yeah.
Family weren't football at all. There was no. You know. So then, how do you find your way into football? Is it just through connections at uni? Is it?
No, I loved playing football. I was just a kid who shouted his own name as he scored between jumpers for goalposts, all that sort of thing. I just loved it, and I grew up listening to football on the radio largely before there was so much live televised football, and the great commentators on BBC Radio in those times. I absolutely hung on their every word. And yeah, it sort of didn't occur to me that I was someone who actually went to football until I was an independent, almost adult by myself.
Right.
But I had always been almost as fascinated by the kind of how it worked in terms of telly and radio as I was by the football itself.
Yeah.
And so those two things grew up in tandem.
Wow.
Yeah. And so go on. No, go on.
I was going to say, sorry, it's a very small point, but you commentated to yourself scoring goals with jumpers for goalposts. So I just really like the image of you commentating on your own goals.
Yeah.
In your head as a child.
Well, but doesn't everyone do that?
They do, but
You probably do it a lot more articulately than the rest of us.
I think the difference is they don't then become the voice of English football 40 years later.
Well, that's, and I suppose I see what you're saying, but really what I was trying to say was that I was no different to anyone else.
Yeah.
You know, it was. I loved it, and I pretended to be all the big stars and do that thing. Yeah.
And you said you got a son?
I've got 3 sons.
Got 3 sons. Are they all into football?
Yes, because I took them.
That's it.
Yes.
So it was kind of ingrained. And how do they feel about you and your voice? Over the telly, like you said,
Great
becoming the voice of English football. Let's be honest.
I suppose they grew up while I was doing it, so they didn't know anything different. And they're all adult now. So I sometimes, for their sake, wish it wasn't like that, really. But they have never shown any resentment towards me for it, which is lovely. And they love their football, and particularly when I was new into the Sky job and was pretty nervous about it, very nervous about it. I'm still nervous about it every week.
Really?
They were and continue to be immensely supportive.
Oh, really?
Lovely, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So if I get a tick from my boys and my wife, then
you're happy.
I'm happy, yeah.
I mean, obviously, that's it's a real skill. I know that obviously you as a musician and also you've done radio. You stand up on stage in front of lots of people and you get the nerves. And I remember when I did my first radio, I've never been more sick and nervous in my life. In my first time here at Fulham, I think I vomited all week. The week leading up to Millwall. How do you cope with that? Because you don't even get a hint of it in your commentary, any sort of nerves. Is it the moment you get going, it's nerves gone?
I mean, I get a hint of it. I mean, honestly, every week.
Do you?
Yeah, I do, yeah. I do.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I do, yeah. You know what? I find it exhausting as well.
Yes.
The nerves and then the thing and then the come down of it.
I get home on a Sunday night and honestly, I am spent.
Really, yeah.
Absolutely spent.
Yeah, isn't it?
Because I suppose you're always only that far away from a really bad mistake.
Yeah.
And it is live, and once it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah.
Especially in this day and age, which is an unforgiving age.
Yeah.
There's no rolling it back.
Yeah.
And also, you just hope that people think it's all right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I have, I don't know about you too, perhaps you feel the same. Maybe that's the reason for nerves. I have terrible imposter syndrome. That
means you're sane.
I really don't think this should be me.
Right.
I don't understand a confidence thing. I can't. Someone that thinks they're supposed to be where they are, I deserve fully to be. You're like, who are you?
No,
that doesn't make any sense.
But does that give you an empathy with the players? Because I was thinking about it on the way that they probably all have the same thing. And there is a correlation in that you're both doing a lot of preparation, dedicating your life to something. And then in the moment,
it could go
you have
wrong.
to be, it could go wrong, but you also have to be completely instinctive and willing to throw away all the preparation for what feels right in that moment. And it's interesting that you're doing that, and the players, you're all doing something.
Which is why, honestly, and not every commentator would agree with me on this. I'm not saying I'm right, they're wrong, but it's why, very broadly speaking, I try not to give an opinion. Actually, it's not my job to give an opinion. I sit next to people who've played 600 games for Man United, 700 games for Liverpool,
Gary Neville,
and others, and they are qualified, whether you like them or not, to give an opinion on how a football match is unfolding. My job is who, where, when. My job is to answer the factual questions and hopefully to articulate the game in a way that helps to bring it to life. And their job is how and why. They answer the interpretive questions, if you like, that make a football fan who perhaps wouldn't see for themselves understand something. And yes, because they're bringers of opinion, sometimes you're going to scream at them and say, I hate your opinion.
Right.
But that's their sort of lightning conductor job. And my starting position is one of complete sympathy for the players. Because they are being judged in every moment. And really tough. Imagine making your debut for Fulham as a 19-year-old, possibly from a country far away, in front of all the fans here and people watching on television. And, if we feel nervous about articulating that game, imagine what it must be like to have that. And in this online age where, you're not fit to wear the shirt, you're not... So he's tried his heart out. I remember taking my kids when they were very young to our local team, and one of them might say to me, Dad, he's rubbish. And I would say to them, and all kids say that. And I would say to them, by the way, son, he was almost certainly the best in his class. And then he was the best in his year, and then he was the best in his school, and then he was the best in the county, and then he was the best in the region, and he got to become a professional footballer. I said, he's not rubbish. He's not rubbish. What's more, he is trying very, very hard. He doesn't want for this to be going wrong. He didn't intend to score that own goal. He's just broken his own dream. So cut him some slack. Don't think of him as rubbish.
That's interesting. It's interesting that people question commitment often in football players, because by being there, you are nothing but committed. You know what I mean? You have to be more committed than is actually humanely possible to even be stood there. And the thing they most often get criticised for is their commitment towards something. But I haven't actually ever thought about it before, that you're the counterpoint to that. You're the sympathy with the players, where there's judgment next to you.
Which is why to say sympathetic is accurate. I am internally sympathetic. You have to acknowledge when a mistake's been made. You can't pretend it hasn't happened. But I mean, having brought up three boys to play local football and done that parent-manager thing and all that, I always say I used to say when the kids were 7 and I was managing the under-8s, I used to say the worst position on the field is goalkeeper's mum. When that ball rolls tamely past through the legs of some poor little child, and they're in tears, the mum. And the players have mums. You know what I mean? Imagine that.
You should say that sometimes to Gary Neville. These players have mums, Gary.
No, to be honest, I don't have to say it to him, because he thinks the same.
He knows.
He knows that.
Wow.
How were you as a manager? I can imagine you were
too soft.
Were you too soft? I was about to say, I can't imagine you yelling at the team after
I was youth football has this everlasting dilemma around participation versus excellence. And at any given local club, you're going to come across that collision, because the best players want to win and the ones who aren't the best players want to play. And if you've got to pick a team that's going to involve all of those, and you've got a squad, and you don't want some poor kid standing on the sidelines for 25 minutes of a half shivering, you've got to rotate them, and you're not always going to have the best players on, and all of that sort of thing. And I was all about participation. So under me, if I was the president of English football,
Yeah.
whatever that is.
Yeah.
Under me, everyone would play,
We'd get
but we'd never win.
You're getting beat 6-0 by Port Vale.
Yeah, correct.
But it's a great view of the boat race.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good.
Well, let's talk Fulham and your history. There's obviously the big one that everyone wants to hear you talk about is the Hamburg semi-final. But before that, I don't know how much you remember it, but there's a really famous moment years before where Sean Davis scores a winner that sends us to the Premier League at Blackburn.
Rufus Brevitt sent off.
Yes, exactly.
I remember well.
Well, yeah, I'm slightly cheating because I had a little look at that today, and you were the top 2 teams in the league. Is that right?
Souness's Blackburn.
And who was
Sagana's Fulham.
Sagana? Yeah. So beyond that, honestly, you're going to have to fill in the gaps because I can't remember what I said or did or anything that day. I can remember it being quite early on in my TV life.
Yeah.
I joined ITV in 1998, and that must have been just turn of the century, 2001, maybe.
Yeah.
April, and it was a kit. You more or less had to win it, did you, to pull clear of them?
We were a little bit. It was to get promoted.
Yeah.
So I think it was relatively safe actually, but it becomes a famous moment because Brevitt sent off the week before. Souness has said we're the best team in England.
Going
Is
on.
that right?
Oh.
And then Blackburn are trying to win the game, and we're on the break actually in the last minute.
Yeah.
And it involves all the famous Fulham players from that team in that move, and Sean Davis ends up cartwheeling.
Yeah.
So it's a really famous moment. But talking about narrative and your thread with Fulham, the best thing about that really is that when Simon Davies scores his goal against Hamburg, you are reeling off in the semi-final at Europa League. I don't know if it must have been complete serendipity and coincidence, but you're saying, don't forget Chris Coleman and Jean Tigana, they've all played their part in this moment. Yeah. And at that moment, there's 20 minutes in that semi-finals going, we need to score twice to go through. And as you're saying the words, the ball falls to Simon Davies, who scores a Messi-like goal, actually.
Yeah, it's a lovely goal.
So this idea that you've been here since the mid-80s and you've commentated on that goal, and you're reeling off the history of Fulham as that moment literally happens, there couldn't be a more magical coincidence.
No,
you know what I mean?
I do. It hadn't occurred to me, but I do. I understand that, and that's a nice thing if people think that. But it's absolute happenstance.
Yeah,
it's just kind of how it.
Yeah.
And I always say this about commentators in all circumstances. We just happen to be the one who's lucky enough to be sat in a good seat with a microphone when something happens, and it's nothing to do with me that Simon Davis scored that goal in that moment, or indeed that the way the story unfolded at Ewood Park that night.
But do you remember, why are you specifically saying, don't forget John Tigana and Chris Coleman in that? Do you think there was a gap in, or were you sensing, Fulham are still in the game? Do you know what I mean?
Probably,
do you remember?
Maybe. I don't remember, no.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, technically speaking, you're probably talking about a commentator who's going on a bit much. Because if I'm still talking about something else when the ball's in the penalty area and he's about to score, I shouldn't be.
Well, it just stands just after you are.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. And that, if I got away with it, that's great. But no, I can't tell you why I was on that train of thought as that moment occurred.
Okay.
No.
So, because there's a thing about that game where you're given a sort of editorial space after the game, because it's a speech that we use in the intro music for this podcast. If you're listening to it,
it's just
well, I made some music and your commentary's over the top of it. So in some way, we are Lennon and McCartney on the intro.
I'll take that.
Can make me anyone? Can I be part of the band?
Ringo.
Okay,
you can.
So
if I.
Underrated. Everyone's favourite Beatle.
You're a rock star, so if I can associate with you, that makes me cool. Makes me
without you knowing it. We have actually collaborated on that track.
I like that.
But was there something that happened there, because you're actually given quite a lot of space in the end of that game where there's a lot of footage happening.
Yeah.
A lot of space.
I think I can't remember. I think two things at the end of any game. The producer will be in your ear normally, because there's a commercial break coming up or whatever.
Right.
So wrap it up.
Yeah.
Get to the end, blah, blah, blah. Or you got 20 seconds here, or you got 30 seconds here. And whoever was producing that program or editing that program would have come in my ear for two reasons. One, to say, milk it. You've got as long as you want, because it was special. So nothing to do with me. That is a very good editorial call. by whoever made that editorial call.
Yeah.
But it would also have been driven by the fact, B, that our touchline reporter, who I think was Ned Bolting that night, would have been trying to get what we call a flash interview. And so the editor would have said, you hold it until we get the player. So that's what it'll be. It would be purely mechanical, really.
Incredible.
Yeah, but it was a good editorial call, I think, because not because of anything I said, but because the scenes were sensational.
Yeah,
the scenes was. I mean, there's never been a lap of honour like John Pansel's lap of honour, has there?
Oh, I know.
And
go.
And yet obviously he was part of that team, which is one of the great Fulham teams.
Exactly.
But if you ask people to name the first 20 Fulham players that came off the top of their head, John Pansel probably wouldn't be one of them.
No.
And yet he had that moment of absolutely undiluted joy.
Yeah.
It was like, and we all have them maybe 3 times, maybe if you're lucky, half a dozen times in your whole life, where there is nothing else. You are purely in the moment and joyous.
Right.
And again, nothing to do with me. That would be whoever the match director was, who was pointing the cameras at it, saying, stay with Pansel, because those were great.
To be honest, it got to John Pansel's head a little bit because he continued to do laps of honour, even we drew 1-1 with teams like Sunderland from that point on every week.
It's so... But I remember even you saying, try stopping John Pansel. Oh, so cool. Yeah. And it's crazy to think that it's something that, you just did in the moment, spontaneously. You have a history with Fulham, like you said, you came here, back in the day from the 80s, you've seen us progress. But you're right. It's one thing having, you're giving the kudos to the director, giving you that bit of space, or saying, keep going, milk it, that sort of stuff. But to actually fill it with that, there's not many people that can do that. And to sum up exactly how, everyone's feeling at that point, and there's a point where you say, this is Fulham, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
And it's great, and you go into this spiel about it and the history, and it's just, I can't watch it without goosebumps. It chokes me up, honestly.
Well, that's really, what can I say, except that's flattering, that's lovely. Except that, I'm not trying to be falsely modest, that was a canvas you couldn't help painting on, if you know what I mean. It was all absolutely there. Mm-hmm. It was there. And this is what I mean about special moments for special clubs. And of course, every club considers itself special. But that was Fulham at its, absolute zenith. Mm-hmm. And everything that's good about Fulham, Fulham's had some bad times. It's had some terrible things. It's had blah, 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 Yeah. But that everything that's good about Fulham was right there in that. And every face was a happy face. And Roy Hodgson, the most understated man there's ever been. We haven't even mentioned Roy.
Yeah.
And, there he is kind of in his gentle, smiley way, just kind of walking back across the pitch and get a little wave and off he goes.
Off for a cup of tea or something, yeah.
That was all part of the beautiful scenery.
I heard you describe actually in the past to Fulham and Jeff really beautifully, but it was an atmosphere of innocence.
Yeah, that's it.
And that is really not beautifully captured, because I guess what you're alluding to there is that we don't assume these things happen to Fulham, and that really sums up the feeling that day, because we were all willing it true, like it was happening for the first time. God, I got shivers thinking about it.
It's very hard to talk about this without getting goosebumps or shivers.
Yeah, but did you have that? Yeah, you must have done. Your history with Fulham.
Of course, it's. I'm not trying to sound worthy or whatever, but before any football match I do, I one of the little exercises I try to do as I'm walking to the ground, literally as if I was a fan, walking up to the ground, is think, what would I be thinking today if I was supporting them? Mm-hmm. And then I switch my head to the other team and say, what would I be thinking today if I was supporting them? What will it mean to them if they win? What will it mean to them if they win? What if they lose? So I suppose I had gone through the process of what if Fulham don't do it, and you were 1-0 down, weren't you?
Yeah.
So that was the likelier outcome for quite a little spell of that game.
It was.
Of course, the scenes would never have happened, and we wouldn't be here now, because you wouldn't be reminiscing on that night as Fulham's greatest night, or one of the greatest nights. And so I suppose if you had lost, Hamburg would have won. And the scenes would have been around the fact that the team who were going to host the final were going to be in it. And that, you know, and that would have been the story. And dear old Fulham, brave try.
Yeah,
you know, see you next
that's
year.
What's meant to happen.
Which is what tends to happen to Fulham.
Yeah,
you know, and talking of the old days, I was looking back again this morning, coming in, and in my very early sports journalistic years, a couple of years after 87, 89, I remember coming here. I say I remember. I checked to see I came. I remember a summer, but I do vaguely remember a summer's evening in May 1989 at a playoff semi-final against Bristol Rovers.
Wow.
Which you lost 4-0. And, you know, coming then and and Fulham lost 4-0. And and by the way, Bristol Rovers, it must have hurt at the time. It didn't occur to me in my innocence, were managed by Jerry Francis, who of course is a QPR legend.
Yeah.
So, and Ian Holloway was in that Bristol Rovers team.
Oh, was he?
Funny enough, yeah. And so that probably for hardcore Fulham fans, apart from the fact you've missed out on a chance to be in a playoff final, given the circumstance, would have been a really sore one.
Yeah.
And yet, as a neutral, you walked away from that thinking, that's what happens to Fulham.
Yeah.
And so I suppose that backstory does play into it all.
What's just occurred to me as you were saying that is obviously your first game, the 6-0, you're talking about Ray Lewington in charge, player manager. He's the assistant during the Hamburg game as well.
Which is beautiful.
So your history with him.
Well, those days in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was working, people may or may not have heard of the name Haters, but it's the kind of top sports reporting agency in London. And when I joined, it was off Fleet Street at a time when Fleet Street was still just about Fleet Street. You know, the newspaper industry was based there and whatever. And so it was kind of old school. And a lot of my early assignments were Fulham one week, Orient the next.
Right.
You know, at that level.
Yeah.
And Ray Lewington was absolute gold. I mean, he's such a lovely man.
Yeah.
And you used to come down and Fulham had either won or lost, just sort of bobbling about in the lower half of the third division. And, you know, now you have a beautiful press lounge and people come and sit down on comfy chairs and but then there was in the Johnny Haynes stand, there was basically a cupboard under the stairs, you know, which a dear old lady used to bring in a big tin kettle of tea for the sort of 6 or 7 press guys. And Ray Lewington used to come in, used to lean against the counter and just say, lads, you know, we weren't quite good enough today, were we? And all. And he was so brilliantly honest and charming.
Yeah.
Charming.
Yeah.
You know, just a thoroughly decent guy who understood the bones of the club.
Right.
You know, and was part of the bones of the club. You know, and still is part of the bones of the club.
Yes.
And that he went on to be, and he was sort of caretaker along the way, wasn't he? Through various crises and so on, before the sort of heady Keegan, Tigana, Coleman days.
Yeah.
And that he was there with Roy for that was meant to be.
Yeah.
The game where you were at Juventus and lost. The night I commentated on that game. I suppose real anorak Fulham fans who remember the whole.
I was there at that game. Yeah.
Were you?
Yeah.
Well, my co-commentator for that game, believe it or not, was Gareth Southgate.
Oh right.
Okay.
And,
what happened to him?
Yeah, I don't know. But there's another, by the way, very, very decent man.
Yeah.
Plus, and he was actually. You know, learning broadcasting to some extent and all of that. And it was just a joy to be with. But the night before the game, we were in the same hotel as Fulham, who had, as the big teams do, had a sort of floor to themselves. And we were on a different... And we went out for a meal. Must have been, it's normally a sort of group of 3 or 4 of us, the 2 commentators and the engineer and the reporter and whatever. And we came in and... Roy and Ray were sat on the edge of the bar, very unobtrusively, pleasantly behaving as they would. They're 2 just normal human beings. And they saw, obviously not me, but they saw Gareth and said, come and join us. And so I remember that night, and I'm not being discreet or anything, I couldn't tell you a word that was said, but I just sat listening to those 3 talk football, and I barely contributed to that conversation at all. So I thought, wow, people would pay £100 in a raffle for the chance of winning a ticket to have this opportunity to hear them talk. And it was just magical. You know, and in a sense, Roy and Ray personified Fulham for me in that moment, because they weren't resistant to me sitting and being on the edge of that conversation. They were warm about it. And I shall never forget that. That was a really privileged situation to be in.
It's really just struck me to say that, but that's what your job is in your work as well. It's like being that aerial to communicate how special something is with people that do it daily.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's true. I do think that's true. And I think I'm about to pat myself on the back, and I really don't want to do
Come on, do it.
We'll do it for you.
We've been working hard on that.
I just think that something I try hard to do is not pretend I'm a player, not align myself to understand. As hopefully I did in that conversation, that I wasn't really in that conversation. I was an observer of that conversation. And so when a magic moment happens, it's not mine, it's theirs. You know, Simon Davis scored the goal. He scored the goal. I was just lucky enough to be there. And I think if you can maintain the kind, almost the childlike thrill of thinking, wow, I was there, or I am there. I'm there. And to be fair, it's much easier in a big European game, because I cling to the old-fashioned notion that night everyone wanted Fulham to win, who was watching our show. There's no we mustn't upset Hamburg. Whatevs, as young people say. So you could absolutely dive into the Fulham vibe without worrying about the fact that the other lot were losing. So to be a kind of conduit to that sort of moment is a joy.
How often do you meet Fulham fans that will, let's say, sort of maybe
great question,
give lines back from that? Not that you, I mean, obviously the big one that I think most remember and is Hamburg will host the final. Fulham will play in it. Do you get that a lot?
Sometimes, Sometimes, I funnily enough, at the cricket club I play for in my geriatric way, there is a family. I'll mention them because they'd be thrilled, because they listen to you, and when they heard I was going to be on with you, they're so excited. So Peter is granddad, and Steve is dad, and Dylan, who's a terrific young cricketer, 15, 16 years old, coming through, he's going to be a superstar. That is 3 generations of Fulham fans. And so every time I go to the cricket club, Peter, granddad, used to be my captain in the 4th team, and he's stopped playing now, which is a shame. But all they want to do is talk Fulham. And so I get a dose of Fulham most weekends of the summer. Brilliant. And Pete's so old, he watched Johnny Haynes make his debut, I think, or something like that. Whatever. But he
give me his compliment.
Done. But you will understand that Fulham fans are niche. Yours is a niche club. It's not like you bump into Fulham fans on the high street. You don't. You don't. And so that's the joy of being considered for a couple of very fortunate moments, a part of that niche. It's like being invited in, and I'm thrilled for it.
One thing that I'm always interested in, though, is for us, it's so iconic. Every single word you said, it's just ingrained in us, and it's part of our history. Do you have that with other clubs? Because obviously it's a special moment for us, and we look at that moment as being perfectly encapsulated by you and your words. But I wonder, how many other clubs you must have that with?
Well, I'm not going to give a specific answer to that, because that would be, on the one hand, immodest or whatever. But I suppose if you've been around a while, you're going to have moments with a few clubs, and I suppose the warmest ones tend to be the clubs that aren't the biggest clubs, because that is the fresh, special moment, I hope I've had one or two. I'll give you one example, only one, and that was which is with, I suppose, over time, a parallel club, Ipswich Town. they've just gone down. You're obviously bigger than they are, but over time you'd agree that you know, it's a similar sort of club. And they won actually what was the very last club game played at the old Wembley. So they beat Barnsley in the Championship playoff final.
Right.
And a fella called Martin Reusser scored their winning goal. It was a 30-yard bluter, the last competitive goal ever scored in club football at Old Wembley. And as it went in, I shouted a not especially inspired line. I said, Reusser, the Premiership, as it was called then. That's all it was, the Premiership. It meant Fulham were promoted. And actually, when they went up for the trophy at the end, I said, for however many years it had been since they were last in the title, I said, for X years, there's been a Fulham-shaped gap in
Ipswich.
an Ipswich-shaped gap in the Premiership or whatever. Anyway, the following autumn, I was at a function and David Sheepshanks, the chairman of Fulham, who I sort of half knew, chairman of Ipswich, then came up and tapped me on the shoulder and he said, Reusser, the Premiership. For 15 years, there's been a Ipswich-shaped, and that was
great luck, man.
And I was, I was very flattered by that.
Yeah.
And so once in a while it does happen, but I stress again that Reusser scored that goal. And Davis scored that goal. I was once on a trip. I know you've had Martin Tyler on here, haven't you?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, and he's been mammoth for a long, long time, and I've told this story, and I have his permission to tell this story. But the famous Aguero goal, which he did so brilliantly, and so he has friends at Manchester City forever and a day. Funnily enough, I did that for the world feed, so it went around the planet. Outside of the UK, you got my version of it, not as good as his, by the way. But we were travelling back one time from a Manchester City game. We were in the same train back down to London, and as it happened, we both got off at Milton Keynes, and we were in a carriage full of Manchester City supporters who'd had a good day out and fallen asleep on top of their six packs, and we were picking our way through the bodies, and one slightly sort of woozy Manchester City fan came around and said, "Are you Martin Tyler?" And he said, yeah. And he said, "Oh, thanks, mate. Thanks for Aguero." And Martin sort of smiled, and we had to get off the train. And as we got on the platform, I said, "They actually think you scored." And he sort of laughed. He said, "It's ridiculous, isn't it? It's ridiculous." Yeah. And I always use that as an example of the fact Martin did that brilliantly. He did it brilliantly, but he didn't score.
No.
And he talks about the director who directed that game. He fed off the scenes. He had a canvas that you could have got wrong, but it was a golden opportunity to express yourself in a way that you never normally can, and he maximised his moment.
Yeah, really.
He really did, and so he'll be associated with that moment forevermore. And quite right, I say quite right too. I think he would agree with me that there's a degree to which that's uncomfortable.
Yeah,
because you're just the storyteller. You're not the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he feels that way. And to an extent, I really don't want to take away from the fact that I love my little association with Fulham. But I was just the storyteller. The story was Fulham's story. And it was a brilliant story.
That's really beautiful. And it's very Fulham-ish to you say that, isn't it? That's
honestly, it's so humble and
as you're saying that, just interested from a discipline perspective, when you're doing radio, quite often people will say the skill is, or when I've been nervous to do radio, I don't know if it's the same with you, Ivan, the producer will often say, just imagine you're speaking to one person.
Yeah.
Is that the same in football commentary, or is there a different sort of skill to it because it's so vast?
Well, no, I think there's a big difference which people don't. It'll only take you 10 seconds to appreciate it, but why would they think about it? If you do think about it, you'll appreciate it very quickly. There's a big difference between radio commentary and television commentary. Right. In radio commentary, if you stop, there's nothing. You are the picture. Yeah. You have to be descriptive. You have to say he kicked it with his right foot. It's a left-footed corner. It's a throw-in on the halfway line. If you're that descriptive on the television, you're wasting everybody's time, and it's a barrage of unwanted noise. And in television, you have to stop. sometimes, and it's better you stop, and you're actually very often more appreciated when you just shut up for a while. And if you do manage to shut up for a while, then what you have to say when you start talking again is likely to be more appreciated. And by the way, we've all been guilty of over-talking. You know, I was talking about a whole load of Fulham managers in the moment when Simon Davies was about to score a very important goal.
I'm glad you were.
Yeah, but, you know, we've all done it because we've got stuff prepared and we want to say it, you know, and that's a terrible temptation to succumb to, but we all succumb to it.
Yeah.
And so the tempo and the rhythm of television commentary is very, very different to radio commentary. And a lot of people like me who came from radio into television struggle with the transition, and it takes years to get to that.
Yeah.
And I'm blaming myself as much as anyone here. If you hear a television commentator saying hits it right-footed, you're entitled to say, I can see it's right-footed.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't need to tell me it's right-footed.
Yeah.
If you hear a radio commentators say hits it right-footed, thank you very much. I now know he hit it with his right foot.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and those sort of little nuances are quite important in distinguishing between the two. And again, I stress, I'm not being schoolmasterly here because I might make that mistake.
Do you ever have like when you're like, you plan for something and you'd be like, no, I've planned for this, and you have to, like, the discipline is like being able to scrap it all in order to react to the moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Do that thinking on your feet.
Yeah, I think the Aguero moment is a good example of that, actually, because I think any commentator who turned up at that game would have had somewhere around the back of their head, or even scribbled down on a piece of paper, the final whistle blowing and Manchester City are champions.
Sure.
You know, or what was the winning goal and Manchester City are champions, because Manchester City hadn't been champions for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And all they had to do was beat QPR that day, who weren't very good at the time. You know, it was obviously going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you had reverted to your preconceived version of that, it wouldn't have done it justice, would have been nowhere near, exactly. And so in terms of thinking about what you might say, I have very strict rules for myself in that I try not to think about anything that happens between the first whistle and the last whistle. Because if you try to preconceive that, it won't happen in quite the way you thought it would. Yeah. Of course, I know that at 5 minutes before kickoff, they're going to come out of the cottage and walk across the field, and then I'm going to see a graphic with the home team, and then I'm going to see a graphic with the away team. And of course, that's what I call a set piece. Obviously, I need to know what the editorial issues are, what the history of the fixture is. I'll get a close-up of the Fulham manager, I'll get a close-up of the opposition manager, and I'll be ready to have something to say for all of that. But once the ball is kicked for the first time, you're silly to think that you can foretell how it's going to be when someone scores the goal. Yeah. Because the goal might be a 25-yard screamer, or it might go off the poor defender's backside. And, you know, your reaction to it is different. Very often your reaction is different when a home team scores to an away team scoring. And people sometimes, you know, might be critical of that and perceive it as some sort of bias. The fact is, when Fulham score here, you've got 20,000 plus screaming. Yeah. When the visitors score, you've only got 3,000 or 4,000 screaming. Yeah, yeah. And the noise isn't the same. It's not the same wave you ride on.
Totally.
You know, and...
Joe, you remind me of those. You know, when the away team score and there's the other opposite end, and there's almost like a time delay where you see the net whistle and it's like from the distance, allowing that space. I love that so much.
Exactly.
It's like a millisecond, isn't there, when people are processing it.
And you know, that's really difficult as a commentator because you can see the ball in and you think, there's no...
why is it not hear anything?
You don't believe what you're seeing.
Is that a goal? And then it goes up. That's great.
But I love that because that's part of... That's a very... English part of football culture because of the away fan thing and because it tends to be behind one goal and it's happened 100 yards away. You know, I don't think you get that in the same way in many other countries.
No, actually, that's so true.
Yeah.
Like, was it Fabregas saying, or maybe Fabregas saying that he didn't understand what his commotion was for corners? Like in no other country do people go insane for a corner kick. Like, and I have that with Fulham as well. Like, nothing happens from a corner ever.
Yeah, it's like the stats. Every
time we win by it, it's like the whole place is like a rush.
I think again, all football fans, we never score from corners. Why we never score? Big Breda Hangeland came
Yeah.
Like, ready to
Cut.
Oh yeah, it was getting caught.
Yes.
I want to ask, I mean, this has been incredible, Peter.
It's been
We
fantastic.
could talk for a long time. I want to ask you before you go, what is your favourite piece of commentary that you haven't done?
Well, that's not...
Do you have one?
Well, yeah, I do. It'll play. Sorry, but it'll play. My
It's
favourite.
Port Vale, isn't it?
No, it's not.
No, it's when the sixth one went.
Yeah.
It's England have won the World Cup by the barest of margins.
Oh,
Ian Smith, when England won the Cricket World Cup, he did it.
I don't-
sorry if that's lost on this audience.
it's
Wrong shape ball.
It's an unbelievable.
It's an extraordinary piece of commentary. And sorry to people who aren't cricket geeks, like 2 or 3 of us are here, but it was a massively brave call because it was a tight line decision. He had to make up in the moment his mind that England had indeed won the World Cup.
Yeah, 'cause it was still
He
vague, wasn't it?
absolutely shouted it, and he was a New Zealander as New Zealand were being beaten, and by the barest of margins. Was a brilliant way of expressing it. And so anyone who loves cricket, who, as you say, I can't say that without the hairs going up on the back of my head.
I felt it.
I thought that was a sensational piece of commentary. And it's a safer one for me to pick than any club football because I might alienate people. But I genuinely mean it. Absolutely brilliant.
And you think that's better? I mean, you can't compare it, but I thought you were going to say they think it's all over.
Well, that's brilliant too.
Yeah.
That is actually brilliant.
Yeah.
Because if Kenneth Wolstenholme had gone to bed the night before saying, this is what I'll say when Jeff Hurst scores the winner, or anyone scores the winner and England win the World Cup, you know, it seems to me he probably he had that line about it's X inches tall, it's solid gold, and it means England. Probably that one was up his sleeve. But there are some people on the pitch, they think it's all over. And then for Jeff Hurst to oblige by bluting it in, I mean, it is now. You're right. I mean, that is comparably good.
It is very good.
I'm just hoping, as we're talking to you, that we're going to get a Fulham moment like that from your mouth again in this season. Let's just say this season.
Yeah, that's it. We're going to go this season. No pressure. This season.
When something magical happens at Fulham Football Club, think of us as the words are coming out of your mouth.
I will.
And your history of Fulham. And has been anything to add? It's just been unbelievable.
No, it's honestly, it's been so good. It's been a joy.
It's been a joy for me too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honestly.
Ladies and gentlemen, Fulham Football Club, the voice of English football, Peter Drury.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Peter Drury there, just one of the nicest guys. And like, I don't know if you ever feel this when you're in like the presence of like a commentator or something like that. It's so weird kind of seeing the face to the voice. You know, hearing that voice that you've heard so many times and you're like, it's coming out of this face that you're less familiar with, you know?
Yeah, totally. But a really special thing as well, Ivan, is that, you know, we did speak about the Hamburg game and how his words are always going to be stitched into Fulham Football Club. And, you know, we even put that in the music in the intro, didn't we? But finding out in that chat just the depth of his history with Fulham, and he understands it going from, you know, being with Ray Lewington. And then, you know, just that, because that's the really special thing about that time with Fulham, is us finding people who understand where Fulham started. Sort of.
It is. It's
90s.
Well, that's it. He had that link, you know, like you said, he was one of 4 journalists, you know, chatting in the, you know, under this little hut with Ray Lewington after we just lost in front of 2,000 fans. And then, you know, he's able then to really draw on that, you know, those words that were exiting his mouth that we all know so well when we made it to the final. You know, he was drawing on that history that he had, like this club, you know, this once quaint club is, you know, he really felt that, you know, he was part of that. It was lovely, man. Really lovely.
And I feel like, I know that you feel the same, but I always just feel desperate that for Fulham to be very successful, but also for us to retain that feeling of being that club as well, because both of those things together is what makes Fulham very special. And it was beautifully articulated by Peter Drury, the voice of football.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So that concludes our first episode back in the 5th season of Fulham Fix. We already manifested winning something at the end of the year by Tom Kenny. So we'll wait and see if that comes true. But in the meantime, we'll be back in a couple of weeks, won't we?
Absolutely. We'll see you soon.
Come on, Fulham.